Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast, where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. I am back here with UnCruise Adventures, here on the Wilderness Discoverer. We are in beautiful Neka Bay, which is a little town nearby called Nuna. It's beautiful out there today. A lot of breeze, a lot of wildlife, a lot of just beautiful scenery. And I have the pleasure right now of introducing you to Bronwyn from Denver, Colorado. She is a second mate, chief mate, and we're going to talk a little bit about her background and how she came to be on the Wilderness Discoverer, and a little bit about her roles and responsibilities here on the boat. So, Bronwyn, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I have to ask first is, what is a second mate and chief mate?
That's a great question. So the second mate is basically the third in command to the captain. So essentially what the role entails is you're the navigation officer. So what that means is you are in charge of creating what we call a voyage plan. So basically what that voyage plan does is a detailed list of all the different areas that we go to. And basically it tells you how long it's going to take us to get to a certain destination, the nautical miles. And that kind of helps us plan out what our week's going to look like. So you're working really close with the expedition leader to kind of create that list to make sure that all of those destinations we're able to actually go to. And so you're also in charge of chart corrections. Unfortunately, now chart corrections are actually kind of by the wayside now. We've moved to electronic navigation charts, which is great since we're moving into the digital age. You're also in charge of publications. So that means like sailing directions, coast pilots, and we also do them for the US and also Canada, since we're sailing through both areas as we're going through the Inside Passage. So pretty much as the second mate, that's kind of what your role is the navigation officer. And then for chief mate, you are second to the captain. So you are the medical officer on board. So should we have any medical emergencies or serious emergencies, that's kind of what the role is there. So that's kind of what you're in charge of. And then you're also really have a full oversight with the crew and then also guest experience.
Okay. Now, so yesterday I kind of slipped on a rock after I got off the skiff. So I didn't fall on the skiff, but after I got off, and I was wearing those beautiful Alaska boots. I know they give them a name for the boots, but those rocks are slippery, and I was okay. But it wasn't yourself. One of your peers came by and said, "Howard, are you okay?" And so you prepared. You're prepared for a lot of things while you're on the boat.
Yeah, so we're definitely prepared for a lot of different things. So should an event arise, we have a lot of experience on board. So for example, the chief medical officer also has higher training, whether that is medical person in charge or medical provider certifications that are required by the Coast Guard. We also do have folks on board with the guide team that are also woofer. So basically what that is wilderness first responders. We also do have medics and EMTs on board as well that do have the higher education for medical situations. We also do have what's called MMA. So that's Marine Medical Assistant. So we kind of call them the doctors in the sky. So should we have an event on the boat that's kind of above our training, that's who we're going to reach out to for further assistance.
Okay. Now, are you a wilderness first responder?
I personally am not. It is something that I was thinking about working towards, since we're in really remote areas. It would be beneficial. I do personally have a medical provider. So when we're talking about like Coast Guard certifications, it's kind of the next level of training up from basic first aid and CPR. And then up from that, there's also what's called medical person in charge. So that's kind of a more in-depth medical certification that you can get as well.
Okay. And I'm curious too, let's get back to the fun stuff being the ship. And how long have you been with UnCruise Adventures?
So this will be my fourth season with them, and this will be my third season on the Wilderness Discover.
And I've kind of get the impression this is like the jewel everybody wants to get on.
Yes, she has the name of Jewel the Fleet.
Okay. And how did you come to meet the folks from UnCruise Adventures and say, you know something? You know, and you mentioned you were a dive captain, and that is no small feat as well. But how did you decide that this is a role responsibility that I want to have?
Yeah, it's a great question. So to kind of answer your first question of like how I got involved with UnCruise was one of my previous shipmates. He and I actually used to work in the Florida Keys at a dive shop together. And several years later, he ended up coming and working for UnCruise. So that's kind of how I found out about this company. And I had been living in the Keys for 7, 8 years. And I was like, I'm ready for something new. I love the sun, but I'm ready to get back to the mountains and see what Alaska has to offer. So that was a great decision.
All right. And back on the boat, I had the pleasure of meeting you and was it the first mate up on the bridge the other day? And which was nice. I want to get back up there. And by the way, folks, when you're on the Wilderness Discover, you do have permission to walk up on the bridge. It's considered an open bridge. Just keep your hands off the dials and the wheel. But that was a great experience. And so I'm curious, what is a typical day in the life for you here on the boat?
Oh, good question. So it really kind of depends on what kind of role I'm in. So for example, like this week, I'm in the second mate role because I'm training one of our bosuns to move up into the second mate role. And then for the rest of the season, I'll be in the chief mate role. So for example, when I'm in the second mate role, my hours are from midnight to noon. So during that time, from midnight until about 7 a.m., we're underway most nights, depending on what the voyage plan is. So busy at the helm, making sure we're safe navigation. And sometimes what that can look like is heavy traffic with tugs, cruise ships, fishing vessels, and also like when we get further into the summer, sometimes that can be a lot of fog and ice too. So safe navigation. And then once we get the anchor down, usually operations for the day typically start around 8:30, 8:45. And so the second mate is also helping the expedition leader out on the fantail to get kayaks out, to get skiffs out, hikes and stuff like that. So that's kind of our focus for the later half of the morning. And then before you know it, it's noon and we're off shift.
I love it. And by the way, I want to thank you, whoever made the decision to put the pontoon boat out there. That was a lovely experience today. So thank you for that. Now, I'm also curious, when you are not working, not on shift, what do you like to do here out in the beauty of Alaska? Do you get a chance to kind of enjoy just being out here?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I actually just got back from a couple-hour paddle with the expedition leader, Megan, and her kayak group. So that was a pleasure. When I'm not doing that, I mean, I try to get off the boat as much as I can. Any opportunity is great for mental health, anything like that, especially when you're on the boat for extended periods of time. But yeah, I try to get off the boat when I can. When I can't, I try to read as much as I can and study for future licensing.
Okay. Just curious, the future licensing that you're studying for?
Good question. So I'm currently studying to get my 1600 mates, and then I'm thinking about going for my 500 master.
Okay, well, we wish you the best for that. Now, before I let you go, I always felt funny. NPR, the interviewers always say to their guests, before I let you go, it's like you can get up and go whenever you want. But, Bronwyn, before I let you go, what kind of insight would you like to leave with potential future guests that want to explore the beauty of Alaska, but perhaps don't want the big cruise ship experience? They would like to have a more intimate experience like we have here on the Wilderness Discover. What kind of insight would you give for them?
That's actually a great question. It's actually one of my favorite questions. So I'm glad that you asked. So for folks that are wanting a different kind of experience when coming to Alaska, it's a small cruise ship company, and the benefits for coming with us compared to some of the larger companies is that we're able to get to a lot of different places that the larger cruise ships can't. We have a lot of more flexibility, and it's like especially if you're an adventure-based person and you like getting out and doing activities, we get to go kayak in some of the most beautiful places, and some of those places are around ice. And one of those locations is right by a glacier, Lamplugh Glacier and Glacier Bay National Park. And that's also another advantage is when we go into Glacier Bay National Park, we have 2 full days in the park, and we actually get to kayak. We get to do some hiking, kayaking. We get a lot of opportunity in Glacier Bay National Park compared to, again, like the larger cruise ships that really only spend a day in there, that kind of just drive in, take some time at the glaciers, and then they're right back out at the park. So I think for anyone that's wanting to have a completely different and unique experience, kind of catered to adventure and getting off the ship and having great food and having great hospitality, like if that's what you're looking for, then I would definitely suggest coming and joining us out in the wilderness of Alaska.
Well, Bronwyn, you have made a compelling argument, and I know I am absolutely enjoying this experience out here, and I really appreciate your time as well as some of your peers. I'm slowly getting through a handful of them to kind of learn more about their roles, responsibilities, and their experience. So thank you for spending time today on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Thank you for having me, and come to Alaska.
I love it. I'd love to come back. All right, folks, we will see you in a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series as we really kind of unpack being out here with the team from UnCruise Adventures. They're taking great care of us here on the Wilderness Discoverer. And as Bronwyn said, come to Alaska and do it with UnCruise Adventures. To learn more about UnCruise Adventures, visit their website at uncruise.com. You can also learn more on their social sites, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. If you enjoy podcasts devoted to outdoor adventure, find us online at outdooradventureseries.com. And remember, we welcome likes, comments, and sharing. You can also find us on our Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube pages by searching for Outdoor Adventure Series. And you can also find us on all of the leading podcast platforms. All the links that we mentioned just now can be found in our show notes for this episode. And until next time, we look forward to having you join us for a new episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.